All right, folks. We're going to get into it tonight. And I had zero plans to get into it. But the volumetric stupidity was so overwhelming today. I had to change my plans and hop online and show you two things. We'll give people a minute or two. Oh, got up to Discord. I'll just leave that there for now. What's the deal over here, Claude? This is going to be pretty interesting. Yo, Dino, what's going on? All right. Good enough. So you've got a minute or so maybe to grab a soda, a whiskey, whatever it is you're drinking or smoking or eating. You want to get some popcorn for this one. It's going to be quite a show. And I think principally not for what I'm going to say, but for what other people are going to say. Starting with Dario Amati. Or, I don't know how to say his last name. And I do have the rule, yo, yo, yo. Oh, yeah, man. The AI fanaticism. Oh, it's going to get wacky in here in a second, Yara. And you helped me piece some of this together, my friend. Because even I didn't know the extent of the lunacy. In fact, the second thing we're going to watch, I think, is what, yeah, it literally is what you sent me, Yara. I didn't even know about that. Now I do. Yo, Gopal, Sean, Kat, what's up, folks? What message did the red phone bring you? Oh boy. It brought some stuff. It. Oh man. Did it ever bring some stuff? All right, let's see if I can show this in a way where we get a little bit bigger picture of Dario. Move some of this stuff off to the side. Make this guy a little bit bigger. Alrighty. I think I test the audio for this stuff beforehand. But just holler if you can't. Oh, for Christ's sake. All right, one more thing. Okay. I think, what did I have? The Discord up over here? So, so finicky. Oh, GCC down the corner. You know, you are moving a window around and you slightly do this on Windows and then it decides to go bonkers. Alrighty. Here we go, folks. We're going to give this a quick listen. And then we're going to go to a second Instagram clip, and we're going to give that a listen. And then I'm going to rant about both of these. But let's hope that I can actually make it through both clips. There's no promises because it's the second one that I saw right now that it started with Yara's message. By the way, thanks, Yara. Appreciate that. Saw that this morning. And then this one popped up on my feed. And, you know, I very rarely leave comments. But I left a comment here. Anyway, let's see what this fella has to say. And for the record, I'm going to break my rule tonight, which is not picking on individual people. The caveat to that is if you're a super famous person or in the public spotlight and you say ridiculously stupid things, I'm going to talk about that. So Dario has officially joined the club. Here we go.
Deal with it. I think we can adjust to it, but I don't think there's an awareness at all of what is coming here and the magnitude of it. My view is the signature of this technology is it's going to take us to a world where we have very high GDP growth and potentially also very high unemployment and inequality. Now that's not a combination we've almost ever seen before, right? You think of it as high GDP growth, that's lots of stuff to do, lots of jobs for everyone. It's always been like that in the past. We've never had a technology that's this disruptive.
Bullshit. The internet, MF, electricity, semiconductors, okay? Yes, we have. Transformers are, which is, I think, all you're talking about, are cool, but there are significant technological breakthroughs in the history of the human race that have been significantly more disruptive. The invention of soap literally changed the face of modern medicine. There have been multiple technological breakthroughs that are significantly larger than this. This dude is smoking something. On top of that, his core argument of being able to have this massive growth in the GDP, yet at the same time have massive amounts of unemployment, logically is unsound. This logically does not make sense in a capitalist society because it's a bartering system, dum-dum. You have to have people that have money that are going to buy goods in order for that GDP to actually be bolstered. So if you're at record highs of unemployment, who's buying the stuff, dum-dum? Like, 1 + 1 is not 37, dude. I don't understand how this guy cannot understand basic macroeconomics. It's mind-boggling to me. But let's watch this again.
So the idea that we could have 5 or 10% GDP growth, but also, 10% unemployment, it's not logically inconsistent at all.
It's fucking completely logically inconsistent. It's totally logically inconsistent. That's why he's saying it, because we're all thinking it. The math is not mathing, bro. It doesn't work like that. So this magical universe that you're living in, it doesn't exist. It does not work this way.
At all. It's just never happened that way before.
Yeah, it's never happened that way before because it's an impossibility problem. It can't happen that way. If it's false, it's just false, bro. It doesn't just magically turn into true. What the F? And this was on the Wall Street Journal. Like, what? This is the guy that's running Anthropic? Oh, and by the way, guys, it's going to get way better when we get to Yara's clip. But I don't even think I've let him finish one time. Sorry, I broke my rule. I knew I wouldn't be able to do it and stay silent for this level of stupidity. But it's so profoundly dumb. I, I don't even understand how someone that is running this company that supposedly is so transformative could say such ridiculously dumb things. But once you start to dig a little bit deeper, it actually will make a ton of sense. One more time.
And I'm really quite, for those both reasons, excited and worried.
Why is he smiling? Like, what is wrong with this guy? Right? You're talking about growing unemployment rates and you're excited about that? Like, do you have no empathy? I like I get it. If Anthropic wins, you're going to be super loaded, so it doesn't matter to you. But can't you at least pretend like you care about all the people that you're going to supposedly displace by this technology? Which, by the way, is also utter nonsense because the new data is showing that the backlash on AI and specifically large language models is causing a reverse of hiring trends, and people are actually getting rehired back for the jobs that they were just laid off at unprecedented rates. I think I have that clip somewhere else. It's fully substantiated by actual data, by the way, not just the ramblings of a lunatic. Okay, maybe he's gotten through it once. Let's go through the whole thing. I'm going to really try to zip it. It's very hard for me. Like, I literally have walked out of talks before when people say ridiculously stupid things because I just can't listen. I don't mind if people don't have knowledge if they're trying, but I have a really hard time listening to people that are saying things that make zero sense. And they're trying to defend indefensible positions. Like, and the worst part is he clearly didn't reason his way to this. It's just a belief mechanism. So he can't be reasoned out of it. And I'll show you some concrete evidence here that the stuff that he is dreaming about that have no substance in reality are volumetric. This is just the latest example, but it goes way deeper. Now, I knew that Sam Altman was doing this because being on the inside of the valley and knowing the people that I know, I get all the stories and they whisper into my ear. And I generally don't repeat the fact that, like, they were worshiping this tree effigy and calling it the AI god and praying to it. I generally don't talk about these things because it's so crazy that I think most people would not even believe me. But it's happening, and I knew it was happening at OpenAI. I just didn't think it was also happening at Anthropic. But it kind of makes sense now, since that was the origin of this. And I thought initially that Dario and his sister left OpenAI because they saw the sheer insanity, and I'm not so sure anymore. Okay, one more time. With feeling.
I think we can deal with it. I think we can adjust to it, but I don't think there's an awareness at all of what is coming here and the magnitude of it. My view is the signature of this technology is it's going to take us to a world where we have very high GDP growth and potentially also very high unemployment and inequality. Now, that's not a combination we've almost ever seen before, right? You think of it as high GDP growth, that's lots of stuff to do, lots of jobs for everyone. It's always been like that.
That's how it works, bro. That's literally like the basis of how this stuff works. you kind of have to have one in order for the other. It's like if you don't have a job, you don't have money, right? Because the job is what gives you the money. And so one thing is dependent on the other. So there are logical steps to make certain things happen. You can't just magically jump to this and magically jump to this simultaneously when they are mutually exclusive of each other. Like maybe he skipped the class on first order logic or something. Again, maybe he's spending too much time with the stochastic AIs and they're teaching him that he doesn't need to sort of think anymore. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, but
in the past, we've never had a technology that's this disruptive. So the idea that we could have 5 or 10% GDP growth, but also 10% unemployment, it's not logically inconsistent at all. It's just never happened that.
Like one of the things that you can do to really kind of understand people is the things they talk about, especially the stuff that they're saying is sort of not real, is usually the stuff that is the realist. So if somebody is talking constantly about how confident they are, it's usually the opposite, that they have insecurities because they have to talk about this. Somebody is talking about like how great their hair is, they probably have major hair issues, right? So the fact that he's bringing up himself that it's not logically inconsistent is helping us point to the fact that it is, and he kind of knows that it is, which is why he's mentioning it. He's trying to sort of get in front of the fact that what he's arguing doesn't logically make sense. So then maybe the person interviewing him won't ask the question of like, but wait a second, how do you grow the economy when people don't have money to actually put into the economy that would stimulate growth? Bro, how does it work, Dario? Explain the logic.
That way before, and I'm really quite for those both reasons excited and worried. I think we can deal with it. I think we can adjust to it, but I don't think there's an awareness at all of what is coming here and the magnitude of it. My view is the signature of this technology is it's going to take us to a world where we have very high GDP growth and potentially also very high unemployment and inequality.
Like, again, is this dude smiling while he's saying these things? I'm super confused.
Now that's not a combination we've almost ever seen before.
No, it's a combination we have never seen before. Never. It's never happened. Right? People don't have jobs. The economy will go into recession. Right? The economy is going into recession. People don't have jobs. These things are bound together. They are in tandem. And in his mind, somehow, magical AI, I guess, is going to be all the humans. But then do the AIs get the money and then spend it back into the economy? Like, bro, how does it work exactly?
Right? You think of it as high GDP growth, that's lots of stuff.
Exactly, Dino. Exactly. How is it possible when less people are working with job loss to actually stimulate the economy? Who's buying the stuff, dude? What?
Stuff to do, lots of jobs for everyone. It's always been like that in the past. We've never had a technology.
Right. So, Peter, yeah, I think that he is possibly trying to manifest UBI, Universal Basic Income. And in fact, in his manifesto, which we're going to get to in a second, he talks about this. And I think that this is the heart of the argument, and that because we shift to a universal basic income model, and then all of that generated money goes to people that don't have jobs, then they're going to put it back into the economy. This is potentially my speculation. But if you look at the logic on how he thinks that this new world is going to come into shape, it revolves around our AI overlords that are deciding how much money we should get based on what. Since nobody's working in this new world of his, how does this work exactly? And then, like, what keeps them from spending their money in other economies? Like, not in the US, right? Like, there's a lot of flaws here.
That's this disruptive. So the idea that we could have 5 or 10% GDP growth, but also, 10% unemployment.
Yeah. Yara, this social credit determined by AI, right? Oh my gosh, like that. Can you imagine for a second that the AI somehow decides how many credits we get? Again, based on what? How much TV we watch? How much we get liked by the AI is the new system. So it's not jobs, it's pandering to the AIs to get more blocks of food. It's a level of wackiness and craziness and authoritarianism that I truthfully, I didn't know until today that he was leaning hard into. We're going to get to that clip next, because that one is going to sort of rock your world. It's going to make this one look like kindergarten. Okay, maybe we've seen this one or not. Let's just go a little bit more in case there's something else he said.
It's not logically inconsistent at all. It's just never happened that way before.
That's a great ending point. Yeah. Okay. We'll stop there for clip number 1. And now for clip number 2. This one I actually like significantly more, because it's actually somebody that has a brain, that is well known and well respected, at least as a venture capitalist. It's Bill Gurley, who is from Benchmark, and formerly of Benchmark. I think he's retired now, but famously backed Uber and a number of other companies, and just a pretty well-respected figure in the VC world. Now, before I play this, it's important to kind of understand a little bit of the background on VCs and the things that they will and will not talk about, to really understand the impact of what he's saying. So let me get this video prepped real quick.
I've literally in the
That's so good. So good, Bill. I just need to bring this up in another tab here, because I don't want to show Yara's private messages to me. By the way, I love when you guys send me these DMs to keep me informed on the stuff, because I wasn't aware of this one, and this baby is a gem. I mean, holy cow. And after I watched this, I did a little research myself, and I would strongly encourage all of you after this stream, or maybe even during it, to look into some of the things that Bill Gurley is talking about, because how do I make this thing bigger? Like, clearly I do not understand how technology works. What if I just... No, that doesn't help at all. All right, well, I guess it is what it is. But before we dive into this, I think it's important for me to give you a little background on VCs and how they kind of work, and what it would require for a very well-known, deeply respected, and highly connected venture capitalist like Bill Gurley to say the things he's about to say. That, and I'm not the knower of all things, right? But I have spoken to over probably 100 different VC firms in the last 4.5 years. And I've actually become pretty good friends with a couple of them. There's a few that I really like. Brent Baltimore from Graycroft, amazing guy. John Spinell and John Lee from Jazz Ventures, amazing guys, and several others. Namdi from Lightspeed. There's, yeah, there are others. But the general rules that they have, if you ever talk with VCs, is they're oftentimes hyper polite people. They're very charismatic. They're very personable. They're very friendly, and rarely will they ever say openly negative things. It's kind of, at least not in the public. They won't say it to you. They won't do what Bill Gurley's about to do, especially for a company that's about to IPO. And oh, is it? Yeah, that's awesome. Purple. Yeah. So they're very careful about what they say publicly, because they don't want to make any enemies with founders. They never know which founder is going to blow up and become super famous or super rich. So they really don't burn bridges with people. They find ways. For example, I work in the academic circles, and when we submit papers for publication, you will get things like an accept or a reject. And they'll just say reject, right? They don't sugarcoat it and say things like, we're going to pass on this paper, Goju. They say, Goju, your paper's been rejected. With VCs, they very rarely, if ever, say things like this. They will say, well, you know, super interesting company, really like the team, but we're having a difficult time seeing how the market would align on this, or this is an emerging market and it has too many unknowns for us, or this is not the area that we generally play in. Like, there's a number of ways to say this without saying, you suck, your ideas suck, your team sucks, your product sucks, and this is going to totally fail. Like, in the hundreds of VCs that have rejected me, I've never heard them say anything like that. It's like, we love the team, we love you, Goju, but we're going to pass. And then sometimes they'll go into detail to try to be helpful, but never, ever burning a bridge, never, ever publicly saying things that could come back to them and potentially burn a bridge. So for in order them to do that, it has to be something pretty egregious. It has to be something so blatant and public that they're just like, to hell with it. I'm going to say what I really think here because people need to know. So now let's hear what Bill Gurley has to say. Again, keep in mind, very well-respected, deeply knowledgeable venture capitalist. He's been wildly successful with the companies that he's backed, especially Uber. He helped them kind of get through stuff. I think he's retired now, but I can't remember if he was one of the founding members of Benchmark, but I think he was at one point managing director. So he was very high up on the food chain and all that stuff. All right, let's see what Bill has to say.
30 days, read everything I can about Anthropic, and I've come up with a new theory. This
Okay, new breaking theory.
The reason I call this the Dr. Frankenstein theory is the more I dig, I've met people who I dare say think it's their responsibility and they're excited about building a species that's superior to humans. And I would just encourage people to read, as much as they can about Anthropic. Chris Olah worked on this thing called the Constitution. It's about 80 pages. It's hard to get through, but I would encourage you to read it. Amanda Askell, who is the chief philosopher, has started doing podcasts. I would encourage you to listen to them and listen to her language. And then Dario wrote this blog post called Machines of Loving Grace.
This is the one that you guys should check out. You don't have to take my word for it, or you don't have to take Bill Gurley's word for it. After this stream later tonight, during the weekend, Google Machines of Loving Grace and take a look at what Dario has written. Strongly encourage you guys to see this for yourself, to understand the way that he and their cult are thinking about things. Because at this point, it's a belief mechanism. It's not a logical premise. And when you get a group of people together that follow insane beliefs on really crazy things, that's no longer a community. That's a cult, at least from my perspective.
Grace. Yeah,
Yes,
I read it.
and it was based on a poem, and the poem is kind of weird. We should put a link to the poem. It's quite short, but the last stanza of the poem says, "I like to think of a cybernetic ecology where we are free of our labors and joined back to nature, return to our mammal brothers and sisters." I don't know what that means.
What? Okay. First of all, let's dissect this first piece. Free from our labors. Okay, we've never been free from our labors. It's my strong belief that having a meaningful life is predicated on doing things that are meaningful. And in the past, when we didn't have all this organized society and stuff, we still had labors. It was like hunting and gathering, right? These were things that we needed to do to survive. And so even if we returned to our brother and sister mammals, wherever the hell that is, who's going to provide for us? Like, what is he talking about here? like, this is such a, it's not like one logical step forward. It is like another universe that just that one sentence. But yeah, let's continue. And yeah, Michael, absolutely. I got the full Starship Enterprise, and I got, yeah, this. We need to have something down over here. I feel like we're not fully complete without that. But all right, let's continue because Bill's not done.
Means like we're going to go live in the fields where the mammals live. And then the kicker, and all watched over by machines of loving grace.
Holy hell. What? And all watched over by machines of loving grace. I mean, guys, I absolutely love AI. But it's just math and code and stuff. They can pretend to have emotion and things, but what are we talking about? We're handing over our existence to the AIs? Is that what you're saying, bro? Like, I'm not signing up for that. Like, who volunteered all of us to, like, did anybody take a vote here that somehow we missed? Because I'm not on board with that. I like the idea of having some form of autonomy. And this sounds like some serious 1984 Big Brother bullshit. And trying to paint this as like this is a utopia? What are you talking about? I just... And it would be one thing if this was the ramblings of just some mad person that we have in the psych ward and we're trying to help them. But when it's the supreme overlord of this company that is building these AIs that are doing things that are somewhat meaningful, it sounds like his end game or their end game is to have the AIs have complete global domination over our entire species. I mean, that is wacky. That is... There kind of aren't words for me to understand the cognitive dissonance of someone to reach this level of disconnectedness and to use a public platform to encourage this, to support it. Right? Like, what? And that there are the followers that I think are... I mean, I thought mistakenly that this was a company that was building cool technology that I enjoyed using. I didn't realize it was its own sort of propaganda machine to build out the entire foundations of the next generation society that we all are integrated into, whether we want to be or not. I mean, it sounds like the Borg, that we are going to get assimilated. Okay, let's continue.
Sounds like overlord to me. And then in Dario's post, he says near the end, and it's very long. You read it, Jamal. I mean, Machines of Loving Grace is very long, but he's talking about in the future, what are humans going to do? Because he believes in the massive abundance and UBI and that we won't have to work. I don't believe in any of those things, but he does. And then he says, it could be a capitalist economy of AI systems, which then give out resources to humans based on some secondary economy of what the AI systems think makes sense to reward in humans.
Now, I generally have the rule of only one F-bomb per live stream. But holy fuck. What is going on here? He's directly quoting this manifesto that Dario himself wrote. This is not Bill Gurley interpreting it and then putting his own spin on it. He's like literally highlighting the text here, reading it word for word. And this is on another level, guys. I mean, our AIs are gonna decide what resources each of us piddly little humans deserve. This is a good thing? Why are you promoting this nonsense?
So that's envisioning a deity of sorts that's going to break ties and decide what humans get.
It's a computational reward function for humans. It decides how much you're worth.
Yeah, so I don't think they think they're writing software. I think they're midwifing a deity here.
I think so too. I think that I was very confused. I thought they were building software. And I think a lot of us maybe thought they were building software. But it seems to me like they think they're building a god-like, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient being that is the overlord that we are all going to bow down to, including them. I think they want to hand over willingly to these AI gods that maybe they think that this exists and all they're doing is just putting the pieces together so it can be fully manifested. Like, again, the cognitive break that is happening here, this isn't one step removed, guys. This is like 200 steps into outer space. And it's in such a willing and optimistic and open way, leading us into imprisonment. I don't understand how anyone that could think reasonably would believe that this would be something that people would openly choose. Like, even the people that I know that are pretty strong zealots for certain things, I think they still have this understanding that ultimately it's sort of a choice for people to decide if you want to believe in this or believe in that. But these guys sound intent on, they're just signing everybody up for it. What the hell?
And I don't know which one I'm more afraid of, the regulatory capture or this second theory I call the Dr. Frankenstein theory. It's more scary to me, I think, the second thing.
These are delusions of grandeur. Let's call it what it is. They believe that they are so intelligent. I know some of these folks, the Burning Man sort of offshoot of it, transhumanism, they believe that they're so powerful, these individuals, that they can create God. And that by creating God, they are like this Prometheus kind of species. It literally is.
I've literally in the past.
I think that's 100% on point. I think that's where they are. That's what the current evidence is telling me. We're going to watch this one more time all the way through, and then I'm going to go through some of these awesome comments that you guys are making. But holy hell. I'm actually super, super excited now for Anthropic to IPO. I have never in my life been so excited about a company IPOing than I am now. And the reason for that is when they go public, the public will control that company. And my sincere hope is that we will bring some reason back into that organization and take these believers, these cultists, and put them in a place where they can sit amongst themselves and are away from really sharp objects. 'Cause WTF, man.
30 days, read everything I can about Anthropic, and I've come up with a new theory. This
Okay, new breaking theory.
The reason I call this the Dr. Frankenstein theory is the more I dig, I've met people who I dare say think it's their responsibility and they're excited about building a species that's superior to humans. And I would just encourage people to read, as much as they can about Anthropic. Chris Olah worked on this thing called the Constitution. It's about 80 pages. It's hard to get through, but
we were just talking about the AI fanaticism and LLM psychosis. I didn't realize that and this is probably on me, is I've been working on AI for, 20 years, and I never once thought that the AIs we should just put them in charge of everybody, and that ever made sense. And I kind of thought that other people working in AI thought similar things, that it was a super valuable tool to help us do cool things, and it would make us more productive or efficient, and we'd offload some of the minutia. It never crossed my mind, not once, ever, that we would build this thing and prop it up and worship it and give it all of the control. Like, there are so many fundamental issues with that violate almost all of the normal human rights that we acknowledge globally. Like, these are just basic human rights kind of things. It is a volumetric level of madness we're talking about here. It is full LLM psychosis from inside of Anthropic's leadership. And I guess it kind of makes sense. I don't know why I didn't connect the dots. I've known for some time that this was going on at OpenAI. I'll be honest. I first heard about this back in Q4 of 2022 when people, it was actually, I think, some of my Silicon Valley students or some other folks that spent some time at OpenAI that they shared with me that there's a cult in there. And I was like, no, there isn't. And they're like, no, really, there is. And they started explaining that they would worship this tree effigy and stuff. This is all on the internet. I mean, they're doing their best. I think Sam Altman and team are doing their best to scrub the internet and rewrite history. But if you dig deep enough, you'll be able to see and connect to all these dots. So I naively thought that, okay, this is a one-off, and OpenAI is sort of in this space. But the rest of the world hasn't lost its mind. And oh, how I have massively mistaken the sanity of some of these folks. Let's watch this one more time all the way through.
I would encourage you to read it. Amanda Askill, who is the chief philosopher, has started doing podcasts. I would encourage you to listen to them and listen to her language.
I would love to know if anybody has actually listened to her podcast. I'm adding this to my list of things to do just because I'm really interested now, based on what Gurley's saying, to get keyed into the language that he's talking about. I suspect I know what kind of language he's referring to. And yeah, well, I could tell you all kinds of things about why I think Andridge joined Anthropic. If you look at, well, we'll put a pin in that for the moment, but this is one thing I'm definitely gonna look into because I want to get. I don't know enough. I just started to go through this rabbit hole. I was actually going to wait to maybe talk about this weekend, but then I saw that other clip and I was just like, I need to go talk about this tonight. But during the week, I'm going to start watching some of this and try to gather up a deeper understanding of just how wide and deep this chasm is between the real world and this fantasy land. And I'll add, just to give full transparency, I have seen firsthand people that were a little bit unhinged, just a little bit, get lost in the AI, and these are pretty smart people, but they just start spending all their time with the language model. They're not interacting with humans anymore, and I've seen this deterioration where they will come to, and I've seen it live. I'm not going to mention any names here, but people that I know pretty well, where they've been going and there's a slow degradation of their sanity as they go deeper and deeper down this path. It's like Gurley saying, this sort of the Burning Man people, where they somehow are connected to this universe that empowers them to do all these things that the rest of us silly humans are completely unaware of. And as a scientist, I also want to acknowledge that there's plenty of things that I don't understand and that we don't understand as a species, that we're making new scientific discoveries all the time. But those scientific discoveries are, again, based on evidence and data, and we are slowly building this up, and it brings us to new levels constantly. There are plenty of things that we don't understand, but in order to advance things, you kind of have to follow this building blocks principle. If you jump out into fantasy world and there's nothing underneath you, then you just start inventing that entire universe to match whatever core thesis you have, which is not founded in reality, which is why you have to base this stuff off of other things that logically make sense. This is sort of the fundamental property of all of our core scientific advances that have given us things like the internet and the transistor and artificial intelligence, right? It's one stepping stone to another. So I'll certainly concede that there's plenty of stuff that I don't fully understand and that we don't understand as a species, but the way you reach an understanding of those things is through a deeper investigation that's backed by a large amount of empirical data that substantiates those theories, those hypotheses. You don't just sort of magically create this stuff like it appears they are. So anyway, I guess I'm kind of blown away that this has all been going on and maybe right in front of our face, but most of us have been unaware of it. I was unaware of it until today. I don't know if you guys knew about this, but it's pretty deep.
And then Dario wrote this blog post called Machines of Loving Grace.
Loving Grace. Yeah, I read
Yes.
it.
And it was based on a poem. And the poem is kind of weird. We should put a link to the poem. It's quite short. But the last stanza of the poem says, I like to think of a cybernetic ecology where we are free of our labors and joined back to nature, return to our mammal brothers and sisters. I don't know what that means. Like we're going to go live in the fields where the mammals live. And then the kicker, and all watched over by machines of loving grace. Sounds like Overlord to me. And then in Dario's post, he says, near the end, and it's very long. You read it, Jamal. I mean, Machines of Loving Grace is very long, but
Yeah.
he's talking about in the future, what are humans going to do? Because he believes in the massive abundance and UBI and that we won't have to work.
By the way, I also want to share, I've heard about this UBI thing quite a bit, and I do think that the divide between the wealthy and everybody else is getting enormous. And if unemployment continues to rise at this unprecedented rate, there may need to be mechanisms to support the general group of society that can't get jobs. But I think that at least what I'm seeing is the belief that AI is going to displace all these people, at least in its current form, is largely nonsensical because of what we discussed yesterday. It doesn't have to do with the capability. It has to do with the cost of reaching that capability. And that at least with modern technology, not AI, but the hardware that we have, we are massively limited in the ability to deliver those capabilities ubiquitously. That's the fundamental problem. And so because of that, there's a reversal that's happening. I think a lot of companies were actually just using AI as an excuse to do layoffs, and then it became like a thing where they were kind of flexing so they would look good for their stock value with other companies, because every time they do these sort of massive layoffs, the stock price increases because it looks as though they're being leaner, right? It appears as though they are being more fiscally responsible. That's why the stock generally increases, right? You're basically cutting out all of the excess fat, so to speak. But when you're replacing it with something that costs significantly more, which is what LLMs are, not SLMs, but LLMs, then it inverts itself. Is you're laying off all these people, which is reducing your costs from one perspective, but then you're using AI to try to replace it, and the AI is fundamentally inefficient in competency, and it is significantly higher in cost. Again, there's that logic thing. Logically, that doesn't make sense just on like step 2. So companies are reversing their position. I'll see if I can find the post where they talk about this as a very recent emergence. I have a screenshot of showing the number of jobs for software engineers starting to spike again, starting in, I think it was Q2 of 2026, something like that. I'll find the data. But anyway, I don't know exactly what the answer is for the UBI stuff, but I think that we are not actually going down the path that, I mean, I think there is possibly a good chance for us to go into recession, but I don't think it's going to be principally rooted in unemployment. I think it's actually going to be rooted in a massive reduction of CapEx on AI spending, because people are starting to find out that this is not delivering all the things that are being promised, or it is at massively excessive costs and it's just not worth it. So companies are starting to reverse their position, and I think this is, again, leading to the consequence of a rush to IPO, just so they can get good while the getting's still good. Okay.
I don't believe in any of those things, but he does. And then he says, it could be a capitalist economy of AI systems, which then give out resources to.
Oh man, that the giving out resources part is, this really kind of gets my goat. It's like a gift to us that it's deeming us worthy of these. It's blessing us and deciding that we can have this. It just the word and what it implies, that we need to be taken care of. Very confused.
To humans based on some secondary economy of what the AI systems think makes sense to reward in humans. So that's envisioning a deity of sorts that's going to break ties and decide what humans get.
It's a computational reward function for you.
I mean, honestly, it is basically the language here, especially from a machine learning perspective, it's a reward function, right? This is sort of reinforcement learning. The language is, at least from my perspective, knowing a lot about the ML side of this, it's like it's being broken down into language that is specific for machine learning, except it's applied in, it's not a reward function for the AIs, it's a reward function for the humans. What the F, guys?
Humans. It decides how much you're worth.
Yeah, so I don't think they think they're writing software. I think they're midwifing a deity here. And I don't know which one I'm more afraid of, the regulatory capture or this second theory I call the Dr. Frankenstein theory. It's more scary to me, I think, the second thing.
These are delusions of grandeur. Let's call it what it is. They believe that they are so intelligent. I know some of these folks, the Burning Man sort of offshoot of it.
I really like his Burning Man association. I'm not bashing on Burning Man, but I know some of the folks that are not like one-timer Burning Man people. It's like their life is Burning Man, and I see in those folks a very serious disconnect from the reality that the rest of us live in. That it's sort of like this, they're at this enlightened state through spirituality and other things. And again, I'm all for self-exploration and growth and all those things, but one can go too far and start expecting, the spaceships to arrive and drinking the Kool-Aid, and the spaceship doesn't arrive and the Kool-Aid just unlives you. You're not ascending to some higher state. You're just unaliving yourself.
Transhumanism, they believe that they're so powerful, these individuals, that they can create God. And that by creating God, they are like this Prometheus kind of species. It literally is.
I've literally in the.
Wow. Okay. We've watched the 2 clips now. I want to take we're going to take like a short bio break and refill on our drinks. And then I'm going to go through the comments to catch up with you guys. If you want to drop now and not stick around for the Q&A, I won't be offended at all, but it's probably going to get even more wacky once we start diving into the discussion. So let's take 5. Stretch our legs. And we'll be right back. I hope it's been as entertaining for you guys as it's been for me. Exactly, Yara. Oh boy. All right. Before we dive into the chat, I want to do some quick bookkeeping. And yeah, Dino, exactly. That's all I was trying to do, bro. I was just trying to build like some AI stuff that would help me with work and help all of us just be a little bit more efficient and things and move science a little bit forward, make programming a little bit easier. I was not trying to invent a whole new religion or society or ecosystem that runs the entire planet. That was never part of at least my design. So, two quick bookkeeping things. First, just to drop the, oh, I think I've got this in GCC. I'll just redrop the Discord in case you guys want to join. It's a blast over there. Let's see if this thing works. It kind of failed on us last time. I think it's still struggling. Yeah, they found something pretty powerful to smoke. And then two other quick things. One, I just dropped a new Substack article on downloadable SLMs. I know it's strange. I'm actually going back to the world of reality where we're talking about real things. And this is yeah, laugh away, man. Seriously. Yeah. That's the Substack article that explains at least my first shot of some SLMs that you can download today and do some coding with. And it's pretty curated and it's very specific. I talk about the model licenses first because I think actually the licensing for the software is more important than the model itself. Because if you're in a hyper restrictive license, as some of these are, then it's a non-starter. Like, it kind of doesn't matter how good the model is, at least for our purposes. You're going to be beholden to the folks building the model, and that's going to hamstring you quite a bit. And then the last piece I'll drop is the VOD that I dropped earlier this week on how to set up a fully sandboxed VPS with 3 different kill switches. So you can do all of your AI work there. And if anything goes wrong, it's fully air gapped. You are essentially fully protected. Now, to be clear, you can still OAuth your way into Destructo world. If you go and you OAuth everything from this VPS and give it access to your entire world, it can still utterly destroy you. So maybe don't do that. But if you use this thing kind of the way that I'm describing it in the VOD, and if anything goes wrong, if the AI goes rogue on you, if you accidentally download something like the NX console, or you get any kind of infection through skills that are coming from ClawHub, just the slew of things that we're seeing. All you need to do is there's like 3 different layers that you can kill it on. You can cut the upper level container and that user, the sandbox user, which doesn't have root access, and then you can just reinstall that upper layer. And if you partition off the work such that it's saved in a GitHub repo and it's labeled properly, maybe I'll go through that process next in a subsequent VOD, then yeah, you'll be able to restore everything. If somehow it infects the OS because like you invoke sudo inside of Cinnamon and allow it to get to the root layer, you can wipe the OS and then rebuild the OS and then Cinnamon on top of it, the virtual desktop. And if it somehow gets below that, like actually into the hypervisor, you can cut off the connection completely, rebuild the whole machine from scratch, and you're still not affected, right? So fully air-gapped, secured, sandboxed machine with 3 different kill switches, not including the air gap itself. And I explain how to do it with Hostinger, and I also give a lot of the background on the details on how this all works, including definitions for all the acronyms, just because that can probably be a little overwhelming if it's new to you, and then showing you what the actual architecture looks like so you can visually see your machine, the internet, and then the sandboxed machine with all the different layers and understand the hardware, hypervisor, OS, Cinnamon, AI stack. So feel free to check that out. And if you use Hostinger, if you use the Goju Tech Talk code for a 12 or 24 month subscription, then you'll get an additional 10% off. But you don't have to use Hostinger. If you want to use something else, use that. And in particular, I might recommend you stay away from using any of the free VPSs, just because, I don't know, the whole free lunch thing is there really a free lunch? But again, you do you. I think the framework should work with any VPS system. The team at Hostinger also fully vetted it, and their technical team, and they seem to agree that what I discussed was pretty much on point. So I've had basically a bunch of technical eyes to do sanity and validation on it. There is one part where it's a tiny bit flimsy, and that is the way that I SSH tunnel into the machine. That's more just for demonstration purposes. If you were to use this more long term, you want to actually burn in the SSH tunneling. I can probably explain how to do that later, but I just wanted to quickly set up the demo with the least number of steps. And there's still something like 12 steps that you kind of have to follow to get it perfectly set up. Anyway, okay, now we can look at our comments. We can make this a little bit bigger now. There we go. Now I think everybody can kind of see. All right. We'll start with Insta, and then you guys on YouTube, Twitch, and Kick, I think you're saying significantly more, so we'll start over here. So these first comments are about the economic promise of growth in GDP somehow that is capable while we're having like a revolution of unemployment. And as I think Peter mentioned earlier, it's largely predicated on this UBI system that he's imagining. and then other godlike reward functions that are involved. Mm-hmm. Yeah, talking about the UBI stuff, it's very complicated. And I know that when you talk about these things, they tend to be fairly politicized, and I don't want to look at it from a political viewpoint. I want to kind of look at it from a pragmatic viewpoint that is apolitical. And I would kind of argue that if unemployment were to continue at an accelerated rate, and somehow the AIs could be highly competent and require significantly less compute to function, we might have a scenario like that. But based on my reading of the tea leaves, that's not going to happen. It's not even remotely close to happening. This is my strong conviction. And I'm not saying that to try to make all of you guys happy, to say the warm and fuzzy thing. I'm saying that truthfully, is in using the AIs deeply for the last 4 years, I have seen significant progress, but I've also seen significant cost explosion and other things. So we may get there one day, but I would argue that we're still decades away from that. And we would need a massive advancement in AI and in hardware. And those things aren't just going to like magically appear. Ellen is saying they're dreaming about this techno-communist utopia. Yeah, and I think that's totally on point. Where machines feeding you, taking care of you, brave new world on steroids. These people are out of their minds, extremely dangerous. Yeah, 100%, Ellen. That's, I couldn't agree with you more. And in the normal reality, when you have this kind of lunacy, you'd kind of be like, just back away slowly and try to keep these people, get them some help so they can work their way back to the reality that is observable and that the rest of us kind of live in. In this case, it's unusual because they have some degree of power. That's maybe I don't want to say scary, because it's not unchecked power. Anthropic is deeply beholden to their investors, and they've taken significant investments, so they don't have like unchecked power, for example, that maybe Linus Torvalds has with the Linux Foundation. Thank goodness Linus is, I think, pretty sane. While he may be a jerk, I don't think that he's like lost his mind. So this is why I'm actually very pro on Anthropic IPOing. Like, that can't happen fast enough. Like, let's get that company public and let's get people with sanity running it. So those folks, we can check them into the psych ward and get them the help that they need and keep the red buttons away from them for serious. Yeah, Dino, we went where nobody has gone before. Absolutely. RS is saying, after 30 years in tech, I've noticed that launch trajectory defines destiny. Better to aim extreme and miss than have low expectations. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that's a really good philosophy. I try to follow that as well. And I don't know exactly what trajectory Dario is on with that first one, but it's a strange one because of the logical disconnection. Ellen saying it's a death cult where AI is watching over you in an eternal happy gulag. Yeah, it is. And they can sign themselves up for it. That's like, sweet, bro. You do your thing, and you guys do whatever you want. That's cool, but just kind of keep that to yourself, and don't force that on other people that don't want to drink that Kool-Aid. But I think that kind of sums it up right there. That yes, and we're well beyond 1984. It's almost like 1984, except with full acceptance and like loving of it without any kind of human resistance. That's the part that I think maybe is the strangest to me, is the idea that they would be so eager to hand over all of their autonomy and their free will to this thing that makes massive mistakes. And yeah. Yeah, can you imagine how sycophant and cult-like the upper leadership meetings must be? Yeah, exactly. DPC, exactly. That's the, like, I would love to know what happens in those discussions. Maybe what I'll do is try to ping some of the folks that I know at these places and see if I can get some minutes or something, like actual concrete words that are being said at these meetings. Upper leadership probably sacrifices baby goats already to their AI god. Yeah. Kids manifesting their future and living their fantasy when they get powerful. Yeah. I think that's like, I remember a time when I was, before I maybe had done any real inventions, right? Before any of my patents or any of my papers. And I certainly, I think, had dreams of grandeur. But then as I started to go through the process of doing these in reality,
I've literally in the past
began
30 days read
here's
everything.
How you make it big. That's how you make it big. Anyway, after I started going through the process of doing actual inventions and actually publishing papers, then I don't want to say like the shine wore off, but I started to gradually understand that these crazy ideas I had about how my one invention is going to disrupt everything was pretty half-baked, right? Pretty, I don't know, out there. And it wasn't that it didn't have value. It did. But it wasn't sort of the massively inflated value that I think I had in my mind. And so I think that there's some maturity that happens after you start to go through this process. Is you still are certainly dreaming big with all of these inventions and these publications, but you're grounded in reality, knowing that massive steps forward are usually only done through a bunch of incremental steps that happen over a prolonged period of time. And that's a very humbling thing, I think, for us to acknowledge. But I most of the scientists and researchers that I know, I think all of us have a very similar type of view. Once you start to get published and you start to do these things and build these novel systems, you're like, yeah, that was really cool. But, oh, yeah, the whole world didn't change. Anyway, I think that could be a big part of it, is this, as Dino is pointing out, this kids and their fantasy. It could very well be that this is kind of the first time that they are, they're kind of hitting a grand slam on their first try, and the stars have aligned, so they're going to be successful. But they're not going through the normal process of suffering all those failures and compartmentalizing those successes that can be very grounding. But I think they're about to get a very rude awakening to the world of reality. I anticipate that that's going to be happening by the end of this year. And that happening will likely level set the world of AI as we know it. That's my strong conviction. Is Anthropic will IPO. It will be a blip on the radar. Maybe it's successful momentarily, but the shine will wear off pretty quickly. It could very well wear off long before the IPO, and the IPO is a complete doozy. It's just complete failure. Wow. Abe Chance, either this guy is dropping AI stuff, or man, he is or she, very fast typer. Or maybe that's a collection of comments. But whatever it is, those are going to be some interesting comments to get to. Actually, because I constantly do IG first, I feel like I'm neglecting the YouTube folks, and that's YouTube, Twitch, and Kick. And that's kind of unfair. So I'm going to pause the... Oh, that's what it is. Oh, can't do... Oh, so maybe it was... I see. That makes sense. Yeah, so maybe it was something that he was drafting for some period of time and breaking it into chunks. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the clarification, Purple. I'm going to switch back. I'm going to leave that paused for a moment over here. By the way, one thing I love about you Jeets is you guys are like highly educated. This is, in a very selfish way, this is so rewarding to me, because I get smarter and more knowledgeable just by going live and reading my DMs, like Yara did today, and many of you on your messages. So just reading stuff like Arthur Clarke's third law of machines, I think. Like, this is, I just, you guys are my people. It's amazing. I feel like my life is complete with this, and we're just getting started, right? The SLM revolution is going to be fully kicked off. In fact, this year I'm going to, I think, start teaching the pivot to the SLMs and encourage the students to, I'm still toying with this, but I might only allow the students to use SLMs, but to use the SLMs as much as they want, but no LLMs, just to help, one, drive the future and help guide the students into a world that is more real. Because we truthfully don't know how this LLM thing is going to play out in terms of pricing. That's the big question mark. Anyway, so yeah, us Jeets, we're just getting started, and we're setting up all the building blocks for building out these AI software systems. And GCC is maybe one of the first. By the way, just as an aside, out of curiosity, I looked at the line count of the code for GCC and the data, and it's around 20 let's say 25,000 lines of Go code now, and it's about 10 to 12,000 lines of JSON data. And I think that's actually pretty good because I've been shrinking it significantly. And the big part is that the data file size is I've shifted all of the non-operational code into data files, so it's super modular. It's probably still inflated. I don't know if I really need 25,000 lines of Go code to support the functionality that this has right now. I mean, maybe, but I'm slowly refactoring all of it, and maybe in a month or two, we'll do a live stream where we'll go through all of the code, we'll go through the architecture, we'll go through all of the JSON files, and then have the design principles on how to build world-class software or enterprise-ready production-grade software using AIs. And it does require some serious guidance that I think if you don't have a background or you don't understand the principles of software engineering, it's going to go totally sideways. I've had to fight with it a lot to get it to stop coding garbage. And I'm seeing the posts too on IG and YouTube where like some guy, I guess, was writing code for 6 months or something, and he threw it all away because the code was just total garbage. Like, I can absolutely see that happening. And if I wasn't steering Claude back in the right direction for GCC, the GCC code base would be complete garbage. Anyway, so you guys rock, I guess is what I'm saying. Freddie, what's up, man? Somehow I didn't see you. Could be a comedy for In Living Color. Yeah, I actually remember that show. Wasn't that like the Wayans? Was it like the Wayans brothers? I loved it. It was pretty great. Thanks, Purple. Purple saying, great view on this. Came to similar conclusions. These people need to get like dropped in the middle of the woods for a couple weeks. Yeah, I think maybe what they need is a serious detox session, like an AI detox session, where I think all you need to do really, just to kind of whip them back up. Oh yeah, we can talk plenty about SLMs. And I think that I'm going to start focusing a lot more now that we have the sandbox stuff set up and I have the list of the SLMs that we can start fiddling with. I've already been playing with the IBM Granite models. Probably makes sense given that Merle was funded by IBM Ventures. And they're not bad, right? I mean, they're not perfect, but the way I know how, I have insider knowledge on how the IBM Granite models were trained. And one of the things that they did that was super smart is they specifically trained it on non-GPL code, which is a very important thing to do right from the get-go. So you're not going to be in any kind of copyright violation situation with the code generation of the Granite models. Now, that does hamstring them quite a bit because they can't ingest the GPL code, and there is a lot of that before we switch to things like MIT and Apache. But anyway, now that we have the basic framework for some of the SLMs, Evie, what I'm going to start to do next is to integrate the SLMs as companions with the LLM and run them in a unified fashion. And then as what I'll probably start doing, and we've already done this a little bit at Merle, is to start to fine tune the SLMs and then expand them. We'll probably have to add additional architectural features to them, like adding diff or something like it underneath. So there's a bunch of steps, but we can now actually do true development with SLMs, including fine tuning them. I think, which is fantastic. I think. Yara is saying they're inflating themselves to $1 trillion IPOs, and that's not just his opinion, because one of them already donated $40 billion of his earning toward the same future unemployment. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but I really enjoy work. I think that there's something special about the way you feel after you put in a hard day's work. Like you have a sense of meaningfulness and achievement. And, you know, you don't need to be insane like I am, where you're doing 16-hour days every day, no weekends off, that kind of lunacy. But I think there's a reason why the mortality rates increase significantly when people retire. That not having something to do, and sort of, I think that there's a lot of meaning in being in the service of others. By the way, the service of others willingly, not as our AI overlords. So it's strange to me that they don't want to work. I think this idea of retirement can sound really fantastic, but I know a lot of people that have gone into retirement and have come out of retirement because they really want that sense of meaningfulness and connectedness. And again, you don't need to go crazy. You can do reasonable hours and work on things that you like, right? Anyway. That's really interesting. I had no idea about Alex Jones and Tim Dillon calling them crazy and predicting this. But that doesn't disagree, I think, with some of the things that I've heard, especially in light of the Jeffrey Epstein files, right? Yeah, the universal crypto welfare. Yeah. Infected with the bullshit mind word. He who controls the spice. Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely, Kat. That it's some kind of infection. Yara is saying social credit determined by AI, so of course they want to position themselves at the top and end the middle class. Yeah, that's, in some ways, I think that that's kind of what they're implying, is there's this, the upper echelon class, which probably they're part of, maybe, I think, but maybe some of them don't even want to be part of that. But then everybody else that's not them is basically subservient to the AIs. And that's not great. I'm not going to live in that world. I'm going to be part of the resistance if we ever move in that direction. That's no bueno. I'm having none of that. Yeah. And that is, I think, the gotcha of all these things, is they're talking about this utopia world where the AIs are going to give out all these rewards, and it's going to be this deity thing. But they're going to be at the top of that food chain, pulling the strings. And that is essentially what a lot of these communist societies look like, is you have the collective of people, but then at the top you have the small number of people that are actually in complete control. And they're in this case, they're making out like it is the AI that's in control, but they're in control of the AI, right? So it is pretty awesome for their little fantasy world, but that's totally not going to happen. What I kind of think will happen is the moment that Anthropic IPOs, they're going to be exited stage left. There's going to be a regime change of people that actually know what they're doing and try to turn the company into a company that's profitable, that is not living in the Burning Man world. And then these guys are going to slowly migrate their way back to the world of reality. Or not, but at that point, who cares? Because they're going to be out of control of this stuff, and we don't have to worry. Like the biggest thing that I think could happen that could hurt us is if they don't IPO and it stays a private company and they get to somehow continue with unlimited funding and do their crazy stuff. But we kind of know that they're upside down. Otherwise, there wouldn't be this race to IPO. That they are talking about certain things, but they're not talking about what their actual profitability is. And again, as we discussed last time, if they were actually in a position of generating profits, they would likely delay the IPO so they could have more control, because they're going to give up significant amounts of control once the company goes public. They're probably getting massive amounts of pressure from their investors to IPO. And the investors are people like Bill Gurley that have a brain and know that they have something that is useful, but the people are in charge are complete lunatics. They can't say this, right? Because they need to shepherd them along. And then once they do, there'll just be a massive wipe. It'll be like a full wipe of that executive team. That's my strong speculation. So, hell yeah, Anthropic. IPO that baby. Do it as soon as possible. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you, Sean. Uh, yeah, technological aristocrat takeover. Yeah. Technocrats. Elite technocrats. But not being presented that way, right? Being presented as, no, it's this AI thing. We're not going to actually be involved. We'll be part of this group of subservient people, but not really. We're just saying that. Oh, cool. The video is going to sound insane, but you'll get it. Okay, I'm going to click on this, and hopefully it'll launch itself in this muted way. Cool. This is, let me pause this. Because I don't want to get copyright strike, given that this is Alex Jones and he's somewhat famous, I almost certainly will be given a copyright strike if I watch that whole thing. So I'll just save it off to the side and watch it later. Purple. I'll actually drop it over here and add it to my, oh, it's to this guy. Oh, look. Yeah, there are some of my links. This is the Alex Jones from Purple. Awesome. All right. Yeah, absolutely, RJ. And it's really interesting because so RJ's talking about the smart cities and close the loop and have total control. It's really curious because part of me is very pro smart cities because I can see how you could be significantly more efficient if you had a smart city that did things like work toward optimizing the traffic and things of that nature. But then when I start to dig a little bit deeper, I start to look at things that are largely driven by capitalist need in smart cities and how it significantly favors people that are hyper wealthy because they would be able to essentially buy access in smart cities to all the stuff that's going to be sort of super fast. And so once you start to think about this deeply, like think about it like this. Imagine that LA was a smart city and it's fully run by technology. So like everything, the power grid, the streets, the street lights, the stores, all of this stuff is controlled by technology. Now, let's say you have someone like Elon Musk, and he needs to go from point A to point B. Then Elon can basically just buy his way to the fast zone, whatever the fast zone is. That, let's say his helicopter is not working today, and so he has to actually drive a car. Then he'll just buy his way to the super fast lane. What that's going to do, though, is it'll shift other people out of that. Then what this will naturally do is it'll create more congestion in the non-super wealthy lanes, right? The normal lanes. It's very much like how HOV lanes work today. And you see there's very few people in the HOA lanes, and the byproduct of that is you, in many cases, actually slow down the overall traffic, even though the intention is to speed up the overall traffic because you're trying to encourage high occupancy. But people like their autonomy, and so they are going to potentially drive by themselves. And so there's all these really interesting, and the reason why I mention this is I was working on an effort in research exploration of smart cities when I was at Intel. It was one of our TSLRP things. I forget exactly what that stands for, but it's basically this advanced technical research effort that was really big. It would get presented in front of the executive team, like CEO, CTO, that group. And then the TSLRPs would decide the next big thing that Intel would potentially invest in. And I don't know, it was like a fancy sort of contest. I think I actually had a TSLRP or two that I was driving. Machine programming was one of them at one point. Anyway, I was involved in this smart city one at one point, and as I started to dig technically deeper into smart cities, I started to think about and see some of the inherent problems that exist that you don't necessarily see when you're looking at it peripherally, but when you start to dive deep, these things start to naturally emerge. So now I'm a bit conflicted. Essentially cool concept, but will it work in practice? Like that part is, I'm not sure. While I'm reading these, one thing that I absolutely love is I always love to hear where you guys are dialing in from. So if you guys can just shout out what city, what state, what country. Oh, and also what time it is. I just actually really enjoy hearing what these things are. And if you're not comfortable with it, don't share. I'm always particularly interested for the folks that are not dialing in from the United States. that we've got quite a few people from, I think, Australia. We've got a couple of people from Africa, a lot of people from Western Europe, Austin, Texas. Awesome. Yeah. What's the weather like over in Austin, by the way? Do you know? Okay, I'll continue to. I'll give you guys like a couple of minutes to chime in, and then I'll jump to the bottom of this chat to see where all of you are dialing in from. And for those of you that don't know, I'm in NorCal, Northern California, and I used to be in the heart of Silicon Valley, like literally dead center. But then I just recently moved, and now I'm a bit more inland, and it's heaven. It's so great. Wow. Is that the temperature right now, do you know? 98 degrees Fahrenheit? Right now where I am, it's a brisk 66 degrees. And after this live stream, I'm going to go walk the doggy. We've been doing this, and he's been loving it. Because it's so chill. Yeah, definitely doing the Starship Enterprise. Yeah. It's getting all kinds of wacky. Yeah, I will have to give you a little bit of a deeper dive on. I've been hacking away on GCC quite a bit, as you might be able to tell. And I'm adding, like, so now there's mouse integration, right? There's full mouse integration. There are now these vertical tabs. And there's not just mouse integration, there's the scroll wheel works, right? And yeah, I changed some of the coloring on this just because the green was getting a little boring. And there's, we redesigned the system at its core, so now it's fully JSON data driven, and I can make massive changes to the system. Largely, I did this for you guys when I released the binaries. So then you now can control, check this out, you can control basically the entire content of GCC entirely through the JSON files. And it can be done in a completely live way without any changes to the binaries. No changes to the binary. So basically, you can customize GCC. So everything that it shows on all the pages can be built directly from the JSON files. You can interact directly with the AI to do the work on the JSON files, and then you can just repopulate it. Essentially, there's a full teardown and rebuild of the entire UI that happens with 0 binary changes. This is part of the reason why you really need to have separation of operational code from data code. And now I think it's been fully tested. We literally went through all of this stuff to make this happen. And so basically, I guess what I'm saying is when I open this up and I release the binaries, you'll be able to make this thing look like whatever you want it to look like. If you want to bind it to like channels, because you're doing social media, you can do that. If you want to set it up to where it's just giving you a news feed, you can do that. Where is the news feed? Is the news feed? Where's the news feed? Here's the news feed. Yeah. All of these links work. So you can just control click them and they'll bring up the thing. The newsfeed stuff is set up so it will automatically bring in the current news. It'll do highlights for the week, and then it'll give you today's news and then yesterday's news. And you can set up whatever the topics are, and this will be done automatically. So basically what I'm doing is it's just meant to be a single control center that's 100% customizable for what anybody wants to use it for, not just me. It's getting there. Okay, I want to see now if folks down here have mentioned where they're in. Oh, wow. Annie, coming in from, oh, Con, that's awesome. Yeah, purple. You and me both. I slowly have been staying up a little bit later and later. I think I was up until maybe 3 a.m. last night, just working on stuff and, you know, just not going to sleep. So I'm sorry that I'm making it worse for you by keeping you online. Minimally, I hope it's entertaining. Andy, that's awesome. South Florida for RJ. Puerto Rico originally. That's sweet, man. Oh boy, Yara. Holy cow. Yeah. It's in New Bedford, Massachusetts. 2 a.m. over there. You guys are troopers. I feel pretty bad for coming online so late because I know, but you know, given that there's people from around the world, any time I pick is going to kind of suck. So I guess it is what it is. I'll still apologize, but yeah. Oh, sweet. Purple. Yeah, that's great to know. Yeah, I'm finalizing stuff with Stanford right now on the day, but as we discussed, I think last weekend, I'm gonna teach. I think my preference was 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And what day, I don't really care. I mean, I kind of care, but the time matters, and then the room, because I'm trying to get this really big room. So then if Jeets want to come in for just 1 week, for just one lecture, they can fly in and just be there for that lecture. Or if people want to be there the entire quarter, they can. Totally up to you. I've had people do it both ways. I've had some people that are in industry literally just audit the class and just do everything, do the assignments, do the project, even present, that aren't officially enrolled at Stanford. And then I've had some people, like, they'll show up just for machine programming day, or they show up for just a couple lectures here and there. But yeah, awesome. And if your cousin's computer science, then, and she's a grad student, my class is kind of tough for undergrads, I think, just because we get pretty deep into the stuff. But we'd love to have her enroll. And you're welcome to attend all the lectures, Purple. I'll be posting the details of the class. I submitted them to Stanford this last weekend, and they should get back to me in the next couple of days. Okay. Let's continue. Okay, we're past this. Yeah, this is interesting. So Purple's saying hard for some people, and a big reason why they won't release UFO stuff and keep science compartmentalized. Yeah. Yeah. And there was some stuff that they released on the... didn't they rename them to something other than UFO to try to make it sound less daunting? But yeah, I think if some people know, in my experience, working with lots of people in all walks of life, one of the things that I've observed is a lot of people, as strange as this may sound, a lot of people can't handle the full truth. That the full truth is really heavy and it can feel overwhelming. And so they prefer actually not knowing all the details. Not all people. Some people, I think, are well equipped, but it does require a lot of maturity to hear the hard things and know the full truth, especially if the full truth is like, yeah, we're on the brink of a full societal collapse or something like that. Or, yeah, the aliens have been basically overseeing the human race for decades now, right? Not that I'm saying any of those things are happening. I'm just saying, like, that if that could be the scenario. And it kind of reminds me of that Men in Black, I think maybe the first one, where Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones are talking on a bench, and Will Smith is asking, like, you know, the people need to know. Why don't you just tell all the people? And then Tommy Lee Jones says something like, a person is smart, but people are dumb. And I think that I think things can devolve into groupthink pretty quickly. And if that happens, then I think the collective intelligence can degrade really fast. And people end up doing stuff that normally they wouldn't do, right? I think this is what happens with riots, is you get enough people around and suddenly their rational mind, their system to thinking starts to turn off. They get a little bit more into reactionary mode, and people that normally wouldn't do kind of reckless, careless things get, you know, collective IQ drops proportionally to the number of people that are around. Anyway, something for us to discuss in great detail in the future. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting comment that Amber has, I think. Yeah, love is not AI. Yes, 100%. We can program machines to pretend to have emotion, but that's sort of all just programmed. And I'm not saying that I understand consciousness or any of that stuff, but I do understand software code pretty well, and it's minimally it's artificial or it's programmed. And we could get into the deep details of, well, aren't we all programmed? But I don't know, there's some stuff about biological beings that I think we don't fully understand. And I think there's a difference between biological and non-biological entities. Speaking of entities, I'm super pumped to see this movie, Backrooms. Is this what it's called? Backrooms? I'm a big fan of Critical Drinker, and I watched his quick overview of this, and he was big +1 on it, and he's super harsh. So for him to, well, maybe he's a lot like anti-Hollywood right now, and I think for good reason, especially with the debauchery that is Disney at this point. But he was really pumped about it. I can't wait. Anyway, Amber is saying it's easy for us to distinguish and use discernment because we are pre-machine, but generation after us will only know machines and extraction. This is, I think, something that is going to happen. It's very much like people that were born with the internet and they never saw the world pre-internet or pre-social media, that there's just I think in their world there is no not having social media. So the idea of like literally turning off your phone and disconnecting is just a profoundly unusual concept. Whereas those of us that were around before social media, it's like, well, no, I mean, you just turn your phone off, bro, and chill a little bit. Like sit on the couch and just talk. You don't need to have this connectivity. With the future generation, where they'll be born into a world where AI has already existed, I think that's going to be a very interesting space. That in some ways I think it can be really good, that they will likely have really deep insights onto how to use AI and to leverage it in a way that like old fogies like me might be a bit curmudgeons to use or explore. At the same time, I think that there could be a very serious reliance on it that could be extremely unhealthy. And we're already seeing that with some of the younger generation. Like the overuse of things like ChatGPT just to help you make simple decisions, like what you should eat for dinner or what movie you should watch, just relying on the AI to essentially tell you all these things. This is, I think it has the potential to get pretty wacky. And I think we're going to have to build some mechanisms in place to ensure that my biggest fear, the fear that I'm actually deeply concerned about, and I get to see this, I have a front row seat to it, guys, because I teach the next generation of supposedly some of the smartest, brightest, whatever minds, right? And I'm seeing an increased reliance on AI to do everything. Like, literally to tell you how to talk to people. That I don't know that that's super great. Because the big question is, how do they function without the AI? Well, what happens when the AI like is off? So the biggest fear that I have is not this dystopia, utopia, communist society that Dario and his pals are dreaming up, because I think that's completely outlandish, and the world is going to revolt and take down that tyranny before it ever emerges. It's too much of a cold water to hot water. Like, you can convince the world to do a lot of really stupid things, but it tends to have to be a very gradual process. It can't happen instantaneously. It's that whole, the frog won't jump out of the water if you turn the temperature up slowly, even if that is a myth. That doesn't actually happen. So in my class, one of the things that I drive home is to make sure the students know how to critically think. That's the part that I'm most worried about, is I can see critical thinking skills slowly devolving in the younger generation that's becoming highly reliant on AIs to do the thinking for them. This is the concern that I think all of us that want to make sure we don't go down the path of Dario should be worried about. I mean, I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. And yeah, Nikki, about when you add biology to AI, 100%, or you add AI to biological things. I do think, and this may be an unpopular take, but I do think that a cybernetic future is our future. I'm 100% convinced of it. I don't know exactly what that future will look like, but it seems inevitable that we're going to integrate machine things into us. And even though I think the execution of this was not super great, there's a discussion of this in the most recent Alien movie where they talk about the three groups of people. There's like humans, there's the synths, and then there's the cyborgs, I think. And so humans are just normal humans. The synths are basically, I think they're just androids, just a full machine, but it kind of looks like it's human. But the cyborgs are the cybernetics. Is they're human, but then they've been augmented. And I absolutely think that we're going to go down that path. And the truth is, it's already kind of happening. If you look at the larger global population, there are individuals that are already doing this cybernetics exploration on their own to themselves. Don't take my word for it. Just Google this, and you'll see lots of stuff where people are literally augmenting themselves. And some of these are going really wrong. Some of them aren't, though. It just kind of depends on how far you go down that rabbit hole. In some ways, we kind of already are doing this a little bit with things like pacemakers and synthetic limbs, prosthetics, and even things like LASIK, right? Even though LASIK is just a machine doing correction physically, it's not something that's implanted, but it's still using a machine to augment you in a way that you couldn't be augmented with a human technician. It requires machine assistance to get you to this like elevated state. I think that if I were to dig a little bit into this, I think the obvious ones that people are going to go after would be the things that are typically degrading over time. Obviously, there's going to be the cybernetic folks that are going to try to live forever, and they're going to try to augment themselves so they turn off the aging gene. I mean, that's obviously going to happen because people want to. A lot of people think the idea of immortality is just pure bliss. I think that's actually probably pure horror. And I think it's a really good thing that we have a fixed period of time on the planet. Is it gives us meaningfulness because the clock's ticking. I think that's really good because we don't dilly-dally. Or, yeah. But so obviously I think some people are going to focus on the immortality angle. But for the general public, what I think is going to be maybe the most obvious first steps are going to be improving our degraded senses. This is the part that I think everybody's going to sign up for. Right now we have hearing aids and we have glasses and we have LASIK. What if you could have an implant? Not something that you just put in your ear, but permanently augments your ability to hear so you can hear significantly better. Also, you could turn your hearing off, right? Let's say you want to go to sleep and you don't want interruptions and you just be like, press something over here and your hearing just becomes disabled. We already have earbud technology that kind of does this, right? It's like the noise canceling technology as well as the transparency mode. So, and it's not too far of a reach to simply get it so it's embedded, and then the next thing that you have to deal with is battery life. And then how do you deal with the battery? Well, there's just a port, right? Now I realize this is probably sounding a little bit 1984-ish, but from a scientific perspective, like looking at this purely just as a technologist, that my understanding is the advancement in biotech, we're not actually that far away from these things. They're just, for example, I think the technology actually exists for us to be able to do this today. The general problems that we have, I think, are rejection from the body, right, to make sure that it's accepted. This happened, I mean, this was actually part of my reconstructive shoulder surgery, is they implanted this metal rod. Even that could be considered like cybernetics. I literally am bionic man over here, as I have a steel rod in my shoulder that it's like way more indestructible than it was prior to the surgery. In some sense, I'm enhanced now. It doesn't give me like superpowers, but I can almost guarantee you that this shoulder over here is significantly more durable now than this shoulder, which wasn't operated on. And it was the exact opposite prior surgery. So when you get into things that are actually not just fixed metal objects, that they have some sort of compute envelope with them, then you get into battery life. And that, I think, is, so you get basically the object rejection, that you need to make sure that your body doesn't reject the implant. And there's like literally at one point in the early phases of this surgery, my body did go into rejection mode. It was the craziest thing. It didn't happen immediately and it didn't last very long, but there were 1 or 2 days where my body was in full rejection mode, and it was crazy. My allergies went nuts across my whole body. I was like getting hives everywhere. And then my body just was like, okay, I'm past the trying to reject this. It's clearly not going to go anywhere. And then it calmed down. But it was bad. Anyway, so that's one part of it, making sure that our body doesn't reject it. And I think this is pretty normal biology stuff. The next part is the battery life. And as long as there's a port that you can plug into, then you basically have a plug-in port in your ear, right? Or you use other things that are chargeable wirelessly. And we have wireless recharging technology that exists today. We use it for our phones. So when you look at it from a purely technological perspective, you're not getting into the wackiness of like, is this ethical and what's going to happen to the human race? Just look at it from, can this be done scientifically? Yeah. I mean, and I think that's a lot of what they're working on with Neuralink. This is also the reason why I'm not afraid of superintelligence or the singularity. Is it just seems obvious to me that no matter how smart the AIs get, we can just implant the AIs into our brains, and now we have all the AI power, and then we have our power. We have the hardware and the wetware, and the AIs only have the hardware. So who's going to be smarter? Us. I mean, at least it's, in my mind, that's kind of like how I logically break it down. Nikki, as far as, the military applications are enormous because you could build super soldiers, which I suspect it's already happening. We have a lot of research that's going on to support the super soldier thing right now. In fact, the drink that I have, it's the ketones. I think that was originally invented to enhance like high physical and cognitive function over prolonged periods of time without food. It was originally, I think it was like a DARPA funded research project, and then it worked exceptionally well, and now it's available to the public. I don't know if you guys have seen I'll find one of those bottles. I sip on them sometime when like it really just kind of kills your appetite. So Nikki's asking, do we think that we've reached AGI? 1000% we have not, in my mind. And there's a couple reasons why I have that viewpoint. And I could go down like a serious rabbit hole here, but I'll keep it a little bit shortish. Yeah, here we go. The first reason why I think that we haven't reached AGI and likely won't for some period of time is we don't even know what this term means. We can't, at least in the scientific community, we can't even agree on what artificial general intelligence actually means. It means like something different to everybody. And there's no, at least from what I've seen, no one has been able to formally define this in a way that the scientific community agrees. So if we can't formally define this, then it's almost impossible for us to formally prove that we've reached it. So that would be the first piece. Now, if we assume for a second that we can actually formally define what AGI is, and then ask the question, have our AIs reached it? I would say that absolutely we haven't. And the reason for that is the AIs can do a pretty good job on kind of BSing their way through some stuff. But when it comes to them being kind of all-knowing and answering things in this persistently correct fashion, they fail miserably. And there are like numerous, I'm trying to get this stupid red box that OBS puts on here. It is, these are the hard problems I can't solve. I can invent entirely new machine learning methods, but I can't figure out how to get the red box on OBS to go away. Just make it stop, guys. Just, why does this... The reason why I want it gone is it's so big and annoying. Anyway, so the other part is because the AIs, at least language models, they don't have the ability to semantically reason about the things that they're giving answers to, they will continue to give the wrong answer for like fundamentally basic questions. And those problems will continue to persist, at least in my mind, until we have a full semantic reasoner inside of the system that will be able to not only do validation on the answers that are being provided, but be able to actually drive the ideation of the answer, which are two kind of fundamentally different problems. One is trying to solve the problem. The other is verifying that the solution you found is correct. And we don't even have the ability to do the strong formal verification yet. That part is missing for many things because formal solvers have massive computational overhead and they are working for small slivers of things. Just click, just click X. Thanks, Dino. Appreciate it, bro. Let me just scroll down the chat here, see if other people are giving me a hard time. Awesome. Freddie, I don't know if I knew you were from Sweden. That's great. Yeah, maybe you told me. Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting distracted trying to read the chat here. Yeah, exactly. Fixed time on life gives meaning. Absolutely. That's sweet. Yeah. Just sorry. So going back to the AGI question, I think that you can see that it gets these very simple questions wrong, like massively wrong. And if it truly is this all-knowing, all-thinking machine, then it wouldn't make these egregious errors. But when you look at the science of it, the word hallucination is just fundamentally wrong in my mind. A better term for that is what I call the spherically constrained stochasticity. That it's essentially just it's a bounded range of errors that are possible in the answers. And I think in one of the prior streams I showed a picture of what this looks like. It was part of what I teach at the university and part of the Microsoft research talk that I gave a few months back. Speaking of which, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but MIT reached out earlier this week, and they've invited me to give a talk on code gen for performance-related code gen. And I think it's a panel that's happening in September, something like that. And, you know, when MIT comes knocking, you kind of, at least for me, I don't generally turn them down. So I'm in, and I'll share the info. It should be public stream, so everybody can join if you want to join that. And it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be a panel where we're all going to argue with each other about the state of things. And it looks like they're going to have probably 4 or 5 heavy hitters. So I'll share the details of that as we get closer. But September, it's going to be part of the high performance, like some IEEE high performance engineering computing thingamabob. I could look it up on my computer, but I'm super lazy and don't want to do that. But yeah, you'll get to see your Goju arguing with some of the prominent minds in this space, making a total idiot out of myself. By the way, the last panel I was on, I was definitely the weakest link of the panel. It was, who was it? It was like Saman Armasingh, who's this full professor at MIT, Kathy Ulick, who's like this full professor at Berkeley, and there were it's just a laundry list of these super famous people. And then there's me, and I was just happy to be there. But it was a good time. So this one should be on par with that. September, I have the link somewhere, but anyway, I'm getting distracted. I want to go back to this AGI question. So the AIs, I think, don't really hallucinate. What they do is they just have a range of possible errors based on the training that they have. And the training is what constrains that error space. So they'll always give answers that are related to what they're trained on, because that's the only stuff they know. And so they're not hallucinating. They're not just manifesting new ideas. All they're doing really is giving an incorrect answer based on probability. And the goal is to minimize the range of possible error answers while not over constraining it such that it overfits and gives you nonsense. And this is a surprisingly challenging problem. Like it's very easy to eliminate all answers. It's very hard to eliminate just the bad answers and keep all the good ones. And that's kind of why we invented diff. Diff is really good at SCS reduction for stochastic systems, because diff is a semi-formal AI that is deterministic and can be trained in a way that basically it becomes a nines problem on its efficacy of correctness, that it will basically, for the things that it's trained on, will get to the point to where it will have 0 false positives or 0 false negatives. You just pick one, though. You can only have one. You can't have both. And with that, you can use diff as a verifier for the output of the stochastic AI, which will then improve their efficacy. When you get that built in, and then you start to generalize that, Nikki, then because that has some semantic reasoning, once you do that for all domains, I think we'll be much closer to this thing called AGI. But in the grander scheme of things, the part that I really am focused more on is just superintelligence. Because superintelligence is something I think we can actually achieve, and it's very easy to define. Superintelligence is basically just for any given domain, the machine is functioning better than any of the existing humans or any of the humans that have ever existed previously. It's like super easy to define. And an example of superintelligence that exists already today is a calculator. So calculators actually are super intelligent, but they only work in a single domain. And that's, I think, the actual forward progress of AI, is focus on these single domains, get them to become super intelligent, and then work on the next domain. And then ultimately, you have a system that works individually on every domain that exists. And then when you couple all those together, now you have the thing maybe called AGI. But that's just how I would do it. I think that would work. And I think that would probably solve the AGI thing. And we're very, very, very far away from that. Decades away from that. And the path that big tech is going on right now, just thinking you can solve this completely with language models, is total and complete nonsense. It's just, it's so fundamentally broken in 100 different ways that, yeah, it would just take me a long time to explain. But yeah, that's okay. That's how I feel about that. Great question, Nikki. Sleepy, good to see you. Sleep is saying they don't hallucinate when they're unsure in order to give an answer. That's exactly right. They don't hallucinate, they fabricate. And they fabricate based on an assembly of pre-known answers. And it's an assembly of the existing pieces to basically give its best BS answer. That's kind of the way I think about it. By the way, I'm really impressed that, what is it, Tuesday? It's like Tuesday night, and there's like 20 of you at least that are just chilling. It's pretty great. Especially for a stream that I had no intention of doing, and just kind of dropping this on you guys. All right, let's go back to our chat processing. Sleepy, where are you dialing in from again? Yeah, Luke, 100%. They absolutely become pathological liars. It's like built into the system that they're pathological liars. This is part of the reason why we need to redefine the fundamentals of inference. So it's not inference, it's utility. So then the AIs have an exit path. So rather than fabricating, as Sleepy's pointing out, they get to the point where they're like, I can't answer that. And then they just say, no answer. But right now, inference has to give a result. It must. And that's built into the way that we do inference, and we need to change that. It's basically, you have a function that takes numbers, and it always must give you a numerical answer, even if the input numbers that you give it don't make logical sense. That's just a bad model approach. And the way that this stuff was originally... Oh, that's right. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah. the way this was originally created, the initial purpose of neural networks was not that it was going to be used so ubiquitously as the foundation of everything. And so I don't think that the original designers thought about inference like it's the be-all, end-all of everything. It was more just like give it an input and have it produce an output. That was sort of the beginning and the end. And then it's like the hard part is building all the stuff. And, oh, sweet. Luke, yeah, you're super close to me. So the hard part was basically coming up with an answer, at least back in the day. And so they focused on that. What they missed, though, in their rush to define inference is they didn't realize that need to have like an error code, an escape hatch. And so now all neural networks are basically built to where they have to give an answer and fabricate stuff because the original design of that API is just broken. It's really as simple as that. It's not complicated. And I think most people they're so deep into the forest, they just haven't thought about this deeply to realize that that's the part that just needs to change. Is the fundamental design of inference need to be changed to utility, and it needs to model contracts that we have established in programming languages for decades where they have error codes or they throw an exception. And then once you have that, then you can start to address the fact that they're pathological liars, like Luke is pointing out. They'll become less pathological liars. And then you begin to chip away at like all the other stuff. Like, does that make sense to you guys? Am I just rambling in outer space? Oh, wow. We're getting into Abe's stuff. Oh, that's cool, purple. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this. Yeah, that's pretty great. What Purple's saying is real AGI requires verifiability, continuity, calibration, and adaptation. Yeah. Probably very much so. Oh, and you're also Abe. Okay, sweet. You're just multi-accounting to keep it real. What if you have diff for all positives and a diff for all negatives in the same system? You could totally do that, Yara. You absolutely could do that. It's a brilliant idea. And that's actually how I would design it. Is I would build a diff for the same problem domain, and I would train the model so it's guided to have near 100% accuracy for positives, and then I would train a second diff model basically on the same data, but to invert it to work in the negative space, and then ensure that it had no false negatives. And then what I'd do is I'd overlap those two together, and then essentially the intersection of those two spaces would give you the true answers. Like 100%. That's absolutely the way to do it. Yes. I love it. That's sweet, Purple. Purple, are you on our Discord, bro? I really hope that all of you guys are on our Discord. I'm going to drop the Discord one more time. Oh, you just joined. Okay, sweet. I'm going to drop it over here. I'm going to drop it over here. And for any of you TikTokers that are on the stream, you can find the Discord link. I can't get onto TikTok right now because TikTok has blocked me because I'm using the CDP thing, the Chrome DevTools protocol, and TikTok does, well, the CCP does not like that. That probably has timed me out for 10 minutes on TikTok. Freaking TikTok, man. I tell ya. Okay, let's scroll back. I want to try to process some more comments here. Governance of data. That's, yeah. I think that's exactly the definition that Anthropic probably has. Yeah. Those people are nuts. And Sleepy, you missed the earlier part of this discussion, and you will probably really enjoy the earlier section where we're getting deep into Dario's mind and madness. Yeah, they absolutely can be sleepy. In fact, when you build in like Bayesian components, they can give you a confidence score on the outputs. And my speculation is that for the internals probably of Anthropic, they probably have this. I think they probably have this, that they can see what the confidence score is. They just aren't releasing this for some reason. Probably because the numbers aren't super great. But if they would, then this would, I think it would actually help people. Well, I think a lot of people would be pissed because they would see that the AI is speaking with definitiveness in many cases when it doesn't know. And that's going to, I think, be a stark contrast for a lot of people who think that the AIs are like all-knowing deities, and then they're going to find out that, oh crap, it's speaking so confidently, but it's only 17% sure that this is the right answer. Why is it talking like this? Like a normal person wouldn't talk this way. But then those of us that want the technology to flourish, I think we would actually deeply appreciate it because it would give us more data and help us trust it more, not less. It's the whole beauty of using weak claims is, at least from what I've seen, people that are hyper intelligent, they tend to prefer qualified claims than absolutist claims. Like if I just come out and say, guys, C++ is the best programming language, and I just continued to kind of force that down your throat, I think all of you would probably just ban me. Because you'd be so, like, repelled by the absurdity of it and its lack of, like, logical founding that you'd be like, I'm going to pay attention to somebody else. This guy is an idiot. But if I instead say, well, my personal preference is C++, and I know that it has many weaknesses, but I think it does these things really well, I think that's a far more compelling argument for highly intelligent people. So the end result is, like Sleepy's raising, is I think that they would actually do a lot better in just the general community adoption of people that want AI to grow and be hyper useful and get away from the hype. And long term, I think it would actually help us build reliable AI systems. So this is part of the the next generation AI system that I'm probably going to start building out is, as we've discussed, I think, before, there's 4 major components to it. You have a deterministic AI system that's foundational. On top of that, you have a stochastic AI that is good for creative ideation, but it can be validated by the deterministic component. You have a probabilistic confidence score AI, like a Bayesian network that tells you the confidence scores. And at the lower level for the hardware, you have application-specific integrated circuits, ASICs, or programmed FPGA that's optimized specifically for those 3 AI components. So it's hyper efficient and it's hyper fast. When you have a system that looks like this, I think that is going to move us into very powerful AIs. And at least today, I know that I'm not aware of any other deterministic learned system that can function at scale other than diff. It might exist, but at least the things that I've read and the stuff that I know, diff's the only thing. The stochastic part we have kind of solved-ish with language models, so that's great. We would use them. The confidence score stuff we have kind of solved with Bayesian networks, so we use that. And then the hardware level part we don't have solved. It's not a GPU. I mean, we have stuff like TPUs that I think are pretty good for stochastic systems. But that's not necessarily great for the deterministic component or the Bayesian component. And again, it doesn't have to be a Bayesian system and it doesn't have to be diff, but it needs to be something that you need systems, I think, that function very well in those 2 spaces. And then there's a bunch of other first principles that you need to follow, right? Like it needs to use semi-trusted, iterative learning. Semi-trusted data, essentially, not ground truth. Ground truth is like totally broken. It needs to support continuous learning, as I think Purple was mentioning. It must support this by design. And neural networks, for example, inherently do not support iterative refinement. They're one-shot training systems. Other concepts, though, in AI do support it, like reinforcement learning. They're very adaptable and adaptive, which is great. But that makes me think that while language models are good as a stochastic piece, we likely need another invention for the stochastic piece that allows it to do inference that can give us the error codes or throw exceptions, as well as being able to support the continuous refinement, like reinforcement learning can do, or diff can do. And that actually, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't been invented either. So there's like a lot of stuff I think we need to invent. We're definitely moving in the right direction now, I think, with the sanity check on language models. All right, I'm going to shut up for a second and try to read this thing that Purple dropped from Abe. Wait, I'm kind of curious what Kat was discussing here. Peter Thiel installs these Puppet messes up our lives in the U.S. and then leaves for Argentina, yeah, things are getting bad. The stock market is going up like crazy on purpose because it's all manipulated, and the administration is getting worse. The worst approval rating ever. The only hope is to buy them back, and we're yeah, absolutely. And the another part that I'm getting a little bit nervous about, Purple, is I think we used to have reasonable checks that would kind of keep the companies and the government from doing, this is specifically in the United States, from doing wildly corrupt things. And it seems as though that's going in the wrong direction. And if the government and companies are allowed to do corrupt things, the byproduct of that is, like, again, if you look at this from like purely a non-emotional way, just sort of a logical way, the byproduct of that is people who are honest and don't do corrupt things, they're forced out because they have fewer levers to manipulate. They won't play the game of corruption. And in a corrupt system, the only people that can survive and thrive are corrupt people. So if that corruption is allowed to persist, then corruption will just spread everywhere and everything becomes corrupted. That part really needs to be stamped out. And it seems as though we're doing kind of the opposite of that right now, is we're letting people do very corrupt things and it's not being remedied. It's not being addressed. And that's like the base level of all of this. This is part of the reason why I think corporate America is going like too sideways with things like Anthropic and OpenAI. For example, the games that Sam Altman is playing, trying to take this company that was not for profit and then make it for profit, that's just like, there's an atmosphere where people that are just mercenaries are thriving, and people that are trying to do this the right way are literally just being annihilated. And that's bad for everybody. That's like the foundation of trust. We need to have this at the base level. And I think that it used to be better than it is now. But that needs to come from it needs to be enforceable at the governmental level, because companies are not going to self-regulate, right? Not in a capitalist society. A capitalist society is geared toward essentially making as much money as you possibly can. Obviously, there's going to be good people that are just not going to do unethical things, but when unethical behavior and corruption is acceptable, the person that, or the people that are willing to do anything will be the ones that win. And that we have to fix that as the base level. That's why I think companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and a lot of these crazy valuations and insane startups that are just having massive funding on business models that don't make sense are allowed to succeed. Yeah. That's a rabbit hole we can go down maybe some other time, but it, at least for me, it jives with the foundation of all relationships. Is I think trust is the foundation for any relationship you have with any person, any entity, any company, any business stuff. You have to have trust first and foremost. It's similar to, I mean, this is a bit tangential, but the SLM thing that I just wrote on Substack, where I'm talking about how licensing matters more than the model. And the reason why I say this is that if the licensing permissions aren't the right way for the model, it doesn't matter how good the model is, because you're basically owned by the licensing rights. That anything you build from that model is going to be controlled by the restrictive or controlling licensing agreements. So it doesn't matter how great the model is, because they own everything that you just built or any modifications that you're making. Therefore, what matters more than the model capabilities is that you're under the right license. Because then when you have the right license, you can improve the model through things like fine-tuning and more training and all of that stuff, reinforcement learning. And then people will want to do that because they can make contributions that are not just unidirectional. It's this whole idea of bidirectional value. It's good for you, but it's also good for me. And in order to have those relationships, it requires compromise. Like, it requires people, I think, to come into a situation and be okay that, to put it another way, nobody gets 100%. You know that going in. This whole idea of everybody wins, like, no. Nobody wins, but everybody gets a reasonable deal that requires some amount of compromise. So then it's a bidirectional valued partnership. That's what I think creates trust, right? Like, it's part of the reason why I do GTT is maybe this is valuable for you, but it's also valuable for me. Why is it valuable for me? Well, one, I get to learn stuff. And then two, as long as it's financially sustainable for me, like if we were assuming for a moment that that was my only means of financial income, which in this case is not the case, but for many influencers it is, then now you have bidirectional value. It's valuable for the audience because they get something out of it, and then it's valuable for the streamer. So in this case, the value is not necessarily the financial value, it's the meaningful value. Is I get to learn new things from all of you, and this makes it significantly valuable to me. If all of you guys were like not saying highly intelligent things where I could be learning and growing, then I probably just wouldn't do GTT. It just would be, has unidirectional value and I'm out. Likewise, if you guys weren't finding value in this at all, then you would be like, I'm out. So, and again, this is such an easy concept. I don't know why we're kind of not getting that with the current climate that's maybe in the United States. But we need to get back to the fundamentals. We really need to get these fundamentals nailed down, and then we can start to have reasonable things as a byproduct of that. Okay. I think that we should call it a night. We've been going for 3 hours. This has been fantastic. Purple, I apologize. I didn't get to the huge monologue that you left. I wonder if I can do... Let me try to do something. Okay, cool. I'm going to try to save all of this into a text file. By the way, once we get Restream integrated into GCC, this thing has a ginormous buffer. Its buffer is, it's just going to be tracking everything. And any of the overflow, it's going to store to log files. So at some point in the near future, we'll have all of this built into GCC, and then none of the chat will ever be lost. And I know it's doable because I did it in Nautica, is that I basically have the full chat history for all the global channels for the last 27 years. Because it's just text, right? Awesome. Thanks, Luke. And good to know that you're so close by. Since you're in Sacramento, again, you're welcome to join my class at Stanford if you're interested in machine programming. I'll be teaching September through December. And please join the Discord if you want to stay up to date. Because I always do going live now on the Discord, whereas it's much harder for me to communicate that information over the various channels. It's kind of allows the inner circle of Jeets to stay totally current with minimally the important VODs that I'm dropping, because I'll always drop a comment there. The stuff that we're doing like on Substack, the software development stuff that's going on with things like GCC, as well as anytime I'm going to go live. So then you'll get pinged on Discord. Okay. We'll call this stream. We'll call this 2026. We're June something. Is it the 3rd now? Yeah. Excellent. We have it all saved. So now I can read through this and check out this longer thing. What I'll probably do, Purple, is look through it tomorrow and then ping you about it. But I love that you took the time to write a longer comment, and I didn't want to lose it. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks everybody. And let me one more time drop a link to the main GTT channel. If you guys aren't sub to that, Goju Tech. Oh, not from that window. That's the unsafe window. Needs to be on one of these windows. Yeah, this one. Oh, by the way, for the new experimental channel that we're growing out, which is already starting to get true virality, not the sort of nonsense that's happening on the old YouTube channel, I renamed it. So now it's Goju Tech Talk 2. And I'll change this. But I still like the name more, it's Goju Trek, just because it's shorter. But I want to drop this guy in because this guy gets all of the live streams completely. It'll have this one, the full thing, and then I upload it with no ads, and I can only control it on the main channel right now for members. I can't turn ads off yet on the new channel because I have to reach some, I don't know, not this number of subs. So feel free to become a member if you want. And then you'll get no ads for stuff. And with that, thanks everybody. This was super awesome. I had a great time. You guys are amazing. So